All right, all right, all right. Greetings and welcome back once again. I pray everybody's doing well. Let me know if you can hear me in the chat once again. Yeah, you can hear me now. So, greetings and welcome back once again. What I was saying is that I'm using a new streaming platform because the other one was tweaking. Okay. So, I pray everybody is doing well. And if you just joined us, we are going to be having a live conversation. I am live. I put up two videos about destiny swapping and destiny exchange. And I said, and I've been going over and tying in the biblical narratives to show how there is a level of energy exchange that we see illustrated through many of the stories of the Bible. So if you are enjoying that, go ahead and put some love in the chat and underneath this video because we are going to continue, right? Oftentimes when we think of that, we think of Esau and Jacob, but yeah, it goes way beyond Esau and Jacob. So we just covered how, in my estimation, and if you disagree, feel free to share that Abraham asserted that, not even just asserted, he suggested that his wife volunteer to say that she's his sister, and this level of deception caused some angst because she was taken into the homes of Pharaoh, which, in antiquity, the only thing that was going to come after that was her being defiled, right? So there had to be divine intervention on that behalf. So what I think is different from that particular story and many other stories is that there was a clear-cut path. Sometimes we think destiny is solely what we want to happen to us, right? But within the word, there is something that this is what is supposed to happen. This is the course that you were set on. This is predetermined, right? Let me make sure I can be heard. Yeah, this is predetermined. So that's not always the case. Sometimes it's personal will. So we're going to kind of look at this and explore and examine whether or not this particular situation between these modern day people, we're going to look and see whether or not there was a level of energy exchange, as well as whether there was a level of destiny swapping, right? Because I do hear the term being used loosely. And again, what does it mean? So I'm trying to pull up again. This new setup is new for me. So if you hear me sound like I'm stalling, just give me a little bit of a second so I can adjust it. Let me see. Okay, that doesn't do anything in the background. Okay, let me see something here. All right, so I'm just going to share my screen. And I'm going to go over some of the things that I found interesting in light of this discussion, right? So this one also allows me to share my screen. So let me share my screen. Like and share this video. I'm going to take my time here. And we are going to read entanglement because that word was popularized during the whole Jada and Will Pink. Well, I was about to call them Jada and Will Pinkett. My bad. Jada Smith and Will Pinkett, right? I'm still doing it. That's fraudulent slip. Jada and Will, this whole entanglement conversation, right? And so what I'm asserting in this particular conversation is that the level of entanglement that was present from what the public could see within these people in this friend group or in this people group opened the door for this exchange that, for those of us who saw the whole thing unfold, and then now you're 20 something years later, you're like, wait a minute. And so now we're at a part in history where everybody's talking. You know what I mean? The streets are talking. So the things that people surmised or the things that people guessed at one time is being made plain in today's space and time. So entanglement, the action of entangling, of course, and also the condition of being deeply involved, right? Something that entangles, confuses, or ensnares. So if we also go on to entangle, it is a verb, it is action to wrap or twist together. Involve in a perplexing or troublesome situation. So like right now, Sean is entangled in a lawsuit, right? In this perplexing, troublesome situation. All right. So let me drop that right there. I just wanted to lay some foundation and groundwork. Yeah, welcome to the conversation. I'm gonna drop the link in the box in a little bit. So So we did Entanglement. And again, the reason I go over things like this is not just because, as you see, I don't chase quote popular news stories, because first of all, it's exhausting. Second of all, the Torah mandates that we do diligent inquiry. And so if you've chased news stories, then you're inclined to make a lot of mistakes because you're just trying to be the first one to have the conversation and not necessarily to proof the information. So I don't mess around with chasing news stories because it becomes problematic. Okay. So you're gonna have to be doing a lot of retraction videos, but that's another story. Anywho, I want to look at the timeline really quickly. Should I look at the timeline first? Yeah, let's look at the no, that's not look at the timeline. Let's look at this article that came out recently. Damon Dash has been commenting on how he what happened between him and Jay-Z. He's been talking about this for a while. He's been talking about Aaliyah. He's been talking about the whole situation that happened with Rockefeller. And again, this is pop culture, right? But again, we can always use things and tie these things in to the conversation, right? I don't know where my little picture is. I'm trying to see where my picture is here. There was a picture that I kind of put together that I wanted to show, but nonetheless. So there are a number of pictures. Hold on, let me see if you can see the picture real quick so you understand what I'm talking about. There are a number of pictures that, here we go. There are a number of pictures, right, that illustrate this level of entanglement. Now, these pictures were not all taken at the same time, okay? This is a composite. So you have one set of pictures where those six persons in this picture, which is Dame Dash, this European girl here, Aaliyah in the back in the white. I don't even know what to call them. We're going to call them Alias. J-Lo, and in the back there is Jay-Z, right? And so in this picture, it was taken at a specific point in time. The picture with him and Beyonce was taken at another point in time. And then the picture with her and Damon Dash is taken, Aaliyah and Damon Dash is taken at another point in time. So what I'm seeking to do is show how entanglement, sometimes, people will go left, and I'm not saying that there may not be something there to what they're exploring, but we have to look at the willingness of the parties before you get to any necessarily nefarious foul play, right? What was the willingness of these parties before you get to the foul play, or what people are asserting as foul play? Because in our own lives, there sometimes there's a level of complicity, even if we don't know that we're doing it, or even if we don't know the implications of engaging in such activity. What happens is, at the end of all of it, we're wondering what happened and how did it happen. Someone took your destiny, someone is living your life. And again, like we illustrated in Adam and Eve and illustrated in the case of Abraham and Sarah, sometimes it's a agreement. Sometimes people come and touch and agree, but not understanding what it actually means, right? So sometimes somebody doesn't necessarily steal it away from you. Sometimes people give it away. And we're going to explore the giving away when we get to Esau. So I'll keep this up on the screen, and I'm going to be reading from a People magazine article and a Vibe article, okay? So because the timeline is important too, especially when we're going back in our own lives, wondering how in the world did I get here? What happened that caused this? We have to go in this sequential order to find out. We have to be our own little detectives to find out when, where, and how something happened in order to address it effectively, right? So now that you have that on the screen, let me go ahead and go back here and read this timeline. So the timeline says that Damon Dash and all these names and Jay-Z met around 1996. That's what the reports are saying, that they met around 1996. Okay. And some 4 years later, according to the reports, Jay-Z meets Beyonce and Damon Dash meets Aaliyah. Now, remember, these people are in the music industry. It's not like they met a friend of a friend necessarily, because even if you didn't meet the people in person, they are on the radio, they are on television. So you know of this person, especially during this time when Aaliyah is at a specific point in time where she's becoming very notable, right? Beyonce wasn't necessarily at the same space that she was in the career. She was more with the group and hadn't broken away yet. But Aaliyah was more notable, especially after, working with the other people, R. Kelly and Timbaland and all the other people who she was working with. So according to the timeline, because we're trying to see when did these destinies, it's fun, it's not funny, it's just curious that Destiny Child was the name of the group. That's just an outlier, but that these people came into connection with one another and perhaps exchanged unknowingly some energy that took them in different directions, right? So according to most reports, Aaliyah is on a trajectory, but something happens on that trajectory. Something happens in that space that takes her off that path and prematurely causes her career and her life to end, right? And so people like to look around to try to think of what could have happened. But before you get to that point, how did you get in this, for lack of a better word, mix up, right? So according to the reports, they first met between 1999 and 2000, Beyonce and Jay-Z. It is said that they first met between that time. Now, in recent times, we have the artist Jay-Z coming and saying how he first met Beyonce. And, he says that he first met her at MTV Spring Break 2000. That time is important. As you see, I like to put together, timelines. I like to put together history, like to recreate stories. So he met in March of the storyline of 2000. It went spring break. So spring break is usually in the spring. And so it's between March and April of the year 2000. Now, remember, he's already in relationship and dealings with his business partner and supposed friend, Damon Dash. So these two would have already known each other at least a good 4 years before this point. Okay. Now, I'm going to read a little bit of Damon Dash's article here. I'm going to put it on the screen so that we can look at, again, sometimes it doesn't have to be on this stage, but because the people are on the stage, it's easy for everyone to see. But let me go ahead and let's read along on this article. All right, let's check this article out. So the article says, this is Dame Dash in recent times talking about he and his ex-business partner, how they were in competition for her heart, Aaliyah's heart. Okay, this is interesting and this is very curious because it plays into the story. So you have two people who already have a level of entanglement because relationship, you begin to relate. Therefore, there's a level of how these two lives intertwine, their business lives intertwine, their personal lives intertwine to a certain degree. So these two intertwined just on a regular energetic level, beings begin to compete, according to him, for someone outside of them, the affections of someone outside of them. So let's read a little bit more. Because usually an exchange, we're talking about exchange, not necessarily stolen. An exchange has to have a level of willingness, a level of being complicit, and it has to have opportunity. As we were looking over the last two episodes, you have to have opportunity. You have to have a desire, right? A desire, an opportunity, a clear course, what the person wanted. Now, there's a difference between what the Creator has destined for us, and I want to say that, and what we destined for ourselves, right? Some of the times, the things that we destined for ourselves is not what is for us. It's like a child wants something. That doesn't mean that's what they're supposed to have. It's what they want, and they move towards it, right? So let's continue. He says, we were both trying to get at her. That never ends well when two friends start going after the same woman. He says he kind of eased up, but then they ran into each other. right? So let's read this. Here is the podcast. You could, at your own discretion. So it says that Dame Dash recent conversation back in 2023 with the That's Blinked Up podcast opened up the floor for him to to speak on competing with Jay-Z in pursuit of the late R&B singer. So before she gets into this space, right? She's on her trajectory. Wherever she's going to go, wherever she's going to end up, whatever's going to happen, right? So she comes into connection with these people. And sometimes people's life, once they meet somebody, they think it's going to go one way and then their life takes another turn. It says the Rockefeller co-founder explained the time him and Hove competed for the Rock the Boat singer's heart, claiming that she gave both of them some play. So this is where the open door also comes in, right? This is where another people will be like, well, she was young, this, that, and the third, but this is where the issue comes in. Just by the way I'm looking at it is because both of these people have a desire, and both of these people are of the understanding that they have they have hope. There is hope that they may be the one that she picks. Okay. All right. So now these two friends or business partners have been, even though if it wasn't intentionally, they have been pitted against one another for this, because how would it end well if one gets her and the other one doesn't, right? So this is before Beyonce comes into the picture according to the storyline. Let's continue. He says, I didn't look at her like that. So initially, let me go ahead and put back the picture on the situation here. He didn't look at her like that initially. Let me read it. Because she was like a tomboy, Dash started. So whether or not his friend had a different understanding of what he thought about her, as we see in this picture, he's with someone else. Well, they're often with other people, but according to what he's saying, he didn't look at her like that, right? But the way we see Jay-Z represented in this picture, he was standing behind her, and in other pictures, you see that he's trying to dance with her and, this, that, and the third. So clearly, one friend had a more of an emotional inclination towards the desired object or person, not object, than the other friend, right? Just by the way the story is playing out. By the way, this particular one where it's the group photo is said to be taken 2000, 4th of July. So according to the story, Jay-Z meets Beyonce in spring break of 2000, but he doesn't talk to her really. Maybe he has another object of his desire, which is Aaliyah, and therefore, as Damien is saying, they're both pursuing her. So maybe, his thoughts weren't in the other direction. We're talking about how things happen in our life and people go left or people go right? Or people go straight ahead. So in this particular instance, we're reading the words of Damon Dash. She was little to me, but then one time, I guess, so by all accounts, he was like, So what changed, right? What shifted? If you're saying all of what you're saying, it wasn't like, yo, and at first when I saw Shorty, something changed. And based on all accounts of what you're telling us, you already knew that your friend had eyes for this girl, right? It says, but then one time, like one time at band camp, right? I guess he said we had the same bookkeeper. So all of a sudden, the tomboyness fell off. All of a sudden, she started to bling. She looked a little different. He had a little different of interest, right? He said, but then one time, according to him, he walked past and every time he saw her, she looked different. And sometimes people can look different. Sometimes things can look different because someone else desires that thing. You ever notice they say when you're single, nobody wants you, but the minute you're in a relationship, all of a sudden, everybody wants you. Have you heard that? You know what I'm saying? So sometimes things look desirable when the other person or someone else desires it. And this is kind of how celebrity works. The same person could be sitting right next to you, and you act like the person has no value, right? But the moment that somebody else or a group of other people desire this thing, all of a sudden it's desirable, right? That's kind of how, it's not the best way that sometimes people are, but that's how people are. So let's continue. We don't know what changed. According to his report, all on a sudden, as my granny would I say, all on a sudden, he looked at her different. She had different looks every time. And he was like, who the blink is that? So how did she morph in that short space of time from tomboy to who the is that? We don't know. We don't know. Because this is said to be 2000 summer, right? And then shortly after that time, they begin to pursue her. I'm going to let you see my screen here as I'm reading this. So I'll put this back up as we go along. Because again, when we look in our own lives, which I often bring it back to, when we look in our own lives, we have to see, or it helps to be able to pinpoint, to identify when this shift took place. If this shift took place, who was around when this shift took place, right? So that, especially if life for you is not going the way you think it should go, if ever since you met such and such, it was derailed. Sometimes it could be a woman. Sometimes it could be a man, a relationship, a friendship, a job, an opportunity. Everything was going one way, and then all of a sudden, one choice took you left field, right? So we don't know why all of a sudden he decided her. Okay, but let's continue. We did hear that she was entertaining and not necessarily committing, because she did come from a traumatic space dealing with R. Kelly a few years prior in her life. Let's continue. He says, quote, I just threw my A game, end quote. He added before learning that Jay was after her too. I don't know. Because based on the picture at that party, you can see, let me see if I find the other picture. Based on the picture at the party, you can kind of see that you can see him leaning into her. Hold on. So I don't know. Sometimes it could be like, oh, and men do it. So who knows, right? Let me pull this up on the screen before I go forward. So in the same time that he's saying he wasn't sure, and then all of a sudden, you know what I mean? He liked her. Let's look at some of the pictures to see that something changed. Something changed. And again, like I'm saying, I wasn't there, but sometimes it's because somebody else wants something, that thing becomes desirable, or that person becomes desirable, right? So let's look at some of these pictures for the sake of time that shows that he was inclined towards her. Here he's hugging her around the waist. Here he's behind her at the party. Dame Dash is with a totally different person. Here, wait a minute. Here she's dancing and he's holding her. Here he's holding her quite closely. There again, they're posed up. He's posing up to her. So whatever this event is, he is inclined towards her. At this particular event, he's not leaning in necessarily with any other person, really. So it would stand to reason that this person had an inclination towards her. And there's a chance that Damien would have known that this guy is checking for her. He's not hiding it, right? I would have to verify what time and date this is, but it has to be to a certain degree in the 2000. Hold on, let me see if somebody has a time on this. Yep. This is alongside Jay-Z at Jay-Z's big pimping party. So, the internet is an interesting place. So Jay-Z, Big Pimpin' Party. And because these time dates for our own lives, unless we have these time dates, some of it will be a little bit more loose. But, you have to go back in your mind and be like, wait a minute, when did this, and this happen? Okay, the album was released in 2000, and I don't have a confirmation. It was released in the beginning part of 2000. So between that part and this part, let me get one more thing. Hold on before I continue. For those who've just joined us, welcome. We are looking at entanglements and destiny swapping and exchange. And I'm doing some live research. So hold on 1 second for me. Okay, they don't have the exact date. Okay, here it is. It was held on July the 3rd, 2000. So it looked like it was around the same time. Here it is. So the other one, when everybody is in the group, let me go ahead and share here. The internet does its thing again. Let me stop sharing this. For those who've just joined us, welcome to the conversation. And here it is. So the other one where everybody's in the group, this is the day before the July 4th party where they're in the white. So there goes again, Mr. I don't even know what to call him. I'm gonna call him Alias. Okay. Mr. Alias, we see that Aaliyah is here leaning into Jay-Z. He has his hand around Jay-Z, Alias does. And they're saying that this is in East Hampton on July the 3rd, 2000. Therefore, it stands to reason, being that he was posed up and pictured up with her that whole weekend, there is a possibility that the thing that changed was whatever he saw, right? Whatever he saw. But that's neither here nor there. It's just to show that when we redirect our energy and our attention to something, right, that may not have been within our line of sight before, right? And now we go and battle with other people for what they're already emotionally attached to, it's going to cause some dissonance, especially if there is already a entanglement or emotional enmeshment or with that person. So we see that in this particular case, based on the narrative, it's Damon who steps into something that's already in play. So let's go back to reading the article. He says, I just threw my A game, he added, before learning that Jay-Z was after her too. I don't know. Based on what we just saw, I don't know. And then, I guess, absorb myself of any guilt, Jay was trying to get at her as well. And I didn't know. I don't know. Sometimes, like they say, sometimes we can misremember. Sometimes we can misremember, because how is he guessing where the pictures are worth 1,000 words? He was holding on to her like, you know what I'm saying? She was he was holding on to her. There was no guessing. So if this was the time that you wasn't really checking for her until after you guess you started looking at her, maybe because your friend now was interested in her, that's what it's looking like. Right? That's what it's looking like. Again, for those who just joined us, welcome to the conversation. We're looking at entanglement in the light of destiny swapping. We are live. I'm gonna drop the link in the box in a minute. But let me know if you have watched the series. What are your thoughts? And has it affected your life in any way? Because sometimes we don't even know, when it happened or if it happened. But let me continue to read for the sake of time. So he's all like, yo, I didn't even know. He says, it got brought up. And I was like, blink both of y'all. This is giving he knew. This is giving he knew. But it never worked out for them. And we were both trying to get at her. I kind of eased up, but then we ran into each other. It's a long story. So this is giving you knew. This is giving you stepped on some toes. And this is giving it, some people may have been upset, which is what we're going to read in a minute. Because again, this predated your relationship, predated this whole dueling for the woman situation. Let the best man win kind of situation. If Anyway, Dame then admitted that many of his musical peers were interested in the young artist and that she was dating but not getting serious with just anyone. Now, it may be the ambiguity of the situation that let people think that they had hope, and that could have also fueled it. But, quote, everybody was getting at Aaliyah, bro. He continued. She'll go to dinner with a ninja, but she wasn't just gonna be smashing. So that was the big deal. Like, who can get with her? So it wasn't necessarily, when we talk about destiny, like I'm saying before, this is man's will, because the creator's will is not to see who could get at her and smash her. So there's a difference in preordained destiny that the Most has to prosper you, Most High has to prosper you and bless you, and then there is man's antics. Right. So when you look at the course, like we looked at Abraham's course and we looked at Adam and Eve's course, this doesn't take the same course. This looks like man's course and man's intervention, but we're going to continue for the sake of time because, there is a difference. Because you can see the foolery that was going on, instead of protecting this young lady who was already violated in other spaces, you're going to see who can get at her as if she, getting at her is some type of prize. But let's continue. So as we see in this picture, this is the same picture. He did not look interested at this time. He didn't look interested. He's over here with Gold Top here, hand around Gold Top's waist. Jay-Z is in the back. And, yeah. So again, this party is, so I stand corrected. This party is the day before the big pimping party. This party, I thought it was on the 4th, but it's actually on the 2nd. So this party is on the 2nd of 2000 in East Hampton. And then Jay-Z's party was on the 3rd for Rockefeller. So is it at this time that now she becomes somebody who he desires to know, who is shorty? Who knows? But again, this thing is now becoming, the waters are being muddied. And according to him, like, F all y'all. But like, if you saw him this weekend, you would have known he was checking for her. And sometimes friends, whatever the internal feelings may be on the outward, for whatever the reason, business, whatever, they're friends, but really there's some type of internal jealousy or internal competition that either both know about or one knows about. There may be envy, there may be jealousy, there may be unseen things in this exchange that's like, oh, you know what? Now, and it happens. Like sometimes people are amongst people and you think that they're your friends and maybe they're in silent competition with you. Is this one of those moments? It's a possibility, because again, if you're looking at this particular weekend and these pictures, it's clear to see who was interesting in that with who at this time, right? So anyway, let's continue. So that's the picture right there. The music exec also revealed that Jay was obviously bitter about him pursuing Aaliyah once he found out. And then he goes on to say, yeah, he felt away, but everybody knows that blink. So it's kind of like now there's this clash. Now there's the entanglement and all of these feelings, emotions, and desires. Now these people who knew each other are colliding over this external person here, and then all of these feelings are kind of like swirling around. And he, even today, 20 odd years later, he seems indifferent. That kind of tells me that he was aware. That indifference that you're hearing, like, oh well, I won, whatever, get over it, it gives me the impression, and y'all let me know in the comments, that he was more than aware that this guy was interested in this person. But he's like, oh, it's whatever. right? And sometimes somebody who may have wronged you may not give you the apology that you're looking for. Or again, I'm not caping for anybody in this situation. I'm just looking at it in the light of the conversation that we've been having on this channel. But sometimes people who have wronged you, they minimalize it and then weaponize your own feelings, because Jay was obviously bitter, is weaponizing his feelings about the situation and putting the blame on him for feeling indifferent that he came in as his friend and stepped on his toes. Right. And that's kind of giving me, like, all of this is giving me you did it on purpose. It's all giving you did it on purpose. Yeah, he felt a way, but everybody knows that Blink. So again, this is another logical fallacy that you're appealing to this popular opinion that everybody, who's the everybody? They've been trying to act like he was really blinking with her. But again, the pictures are indicating that even if you may feel like he didn't get the girl, quote unquote, you saw an expressed interest as his friend for him towards her. So in doing so, if you saw that he had an expressed interest towards her as a friend, as a business partner, wouldn't it have been better to approach him and say, bro, I see you look like you vibing for her. What's good? Right? You don't automatically jump into a competition to try to see who's the best man when, you know, you have all of these other relationships that you have to make sure that stays intact. This is how things fall apart, right? In families, in relationship amongst friends, this is how things fall apart, because there may have been secret enmity, envy, jealousy, I don't know, wasn't there, but the way it's reading is that, oh well, get over it, you bitter because I won. When if he was your friend, you would say, hey, you know, by the looks of things, you really feeling her, you know, such and such and such. Let me continue. That's just my thoughts, but let's continue. He says, nah, he was sending flowers and doing all that. He was courting her. So we were both going hard and ended up in the same house for 4th of July. And again, that 4th of July is what we're seeing, which are these pictures from the 4th of July. Let me rewind here. This is the 4th of July weekend. One day they're here and he's with this woman, and the next day he sees his friend. I mean, let me go back to the picture, because I'm like, bro, how did you not? The next day he sees his friend. Maybe he was busy or otherwise occupied, but the next day he sees his friend leaned in. I mean, Guy wasn't just lurking in the background. Guy had his whole hand around her as if to say, she's mine. You understand what I'm saying? Look, she's dancing and he has the 2-hand grip, not the 2-hand grip. And it's not like she's like, hey boy, come off of me, where you touch me for. It's the 2-hand grip, as to say, I might want this. Every time you see him, he's over there, he's holding her hand in this particular picture. And she's holding his. Actually, his hand is in her hand. Let me know if you can see that. His hand is in her hand in this particular picture. And these are pictures. We don't know what was happening throughout the night, wasn't there, did not desire to be there. Okay. But his hand is in her hand throughout in this picture. So the thought that, you know, I didn't know, and he's just in his feelings. Again, she's dancing. She has her hand around his neck. And so it's clear he has his hand around her midsection. So this don't look like he was just sending her flowers. There was some level of reciprocity here. Because again, she could have easily said, hey boy, come on for me. Don't touch me. Where you touch me for? Okay. This one right here is questionable to the side right here. You know, but okay. So again, and there goes another one. All right. And she's hugging him up here. Okay, so let's stop sharing that. Let's go back to what we were doing. Again, how do we get in these positions? When doors spiritually are open, right? When people have certain levels of proximity, When things are done that open certain doors, it makes people become vulnerable to certain things. But not all things is like somebody over there doing something. Some of these things are action based that opens these doors, right? For the individual. So in this case, on this very earthly realm, this interaction between these two friends over a girl is what caused this, what appears to be this rift, right? So let's continue. Ah, boy. Where are we? It was like one day, listen to what he's saying now. Aaliyah might lean towards him and then it'll lean towards me. But brother, if you wasn't, she looked tomboyish and you wasn't into her, he been leaning into her according to these accounts. He added about his consistency with the singer, but he says he was just on fire that week. Everything he was saying was so funny. You know what I'm saying? He remembers coming downstairs and Jay was like, cause like, you know, his friends were laughing at him. So beyond, how do we get to this side of the conversation? Like a lot of this stuff is missed because people like beef and we like back and forth and we like to go far beyond into what somebody else could have been doing. But a lot of this stuff started on the ground. Now he's aware that his actions to a certain degree of pursuing someone that it was evident by the pictures that his friend was already interested in, and now that he was able to slide in and, you know, entertain her and make her laugh, and now he's being shamed publicly and humiliated, right? He says, because like, you know, his friends were laughing at him and blink, and then, you know, the next vibing, right, next thing you know, they pop up with another picture, right? And this picture, it doesn't give the exact date on this picture. But it goes on to say she was only 22 years old when she died in 2001. And it goes on to say how she died in the plane crash, this, that, and the third. Right. So I wanted to read that because it gave a lot of insight onto how close proximity, and we're going to read about that as well in the case of Rachel and her sister Leah, as well as Jacob and Esau, right? This relationship and this proximity and this enmity in the relationship opens the door and an exchange happens. And then one person begins to live the other person's life. Like in this particular case, he went on to be with her. Now, in recent times, he's saying, Damon Dash is saying that he wanted to marry her. Okay. He wanted to marry her, but she passed away before that point. So the girl that he essentially finessed from his friend, he wanted to marry, but he didn't get to. And as a result of that meeting, because, you know, the person who's not in this conversation at that point is Beyonce. He met her in passing, but now he turns his attention from what the person he initially desired. I don't know for what. I'm not saying why he desired her or what he desired her for. I'm just saying the person that Jay-Z initially desired, he now turns his attention towards Beyonce. So one would have to ask, would one have this relationship if this didn't happen? That's kind of how, you know, things jump track. If this didn't happen, the person wouldn't have ended up over here, right? And sometimes it works out for the better, and sometimes for some people it doesn't, right? I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the box. As I said, this is a new streaming platform, so take time. Let me see, SNL. Let me see. Oh, here's the link. Let me know your thoughts in the box below. Yeah, welcome to the conversation. Yes. Yeah, I'm sneaking in an early one. We're getting a lot of heavy rains. I don't know how it's going to work out. So I said, let me get on here early because we're getting a lot of heavy rains. But I think it's a soap opera, yes, but it's a missed opportunity because most people are just looking at it for the drama and not necessarily learning from it. Right? It's like, ooh, it's like, it's first of all, it's exhausting to even what's going on now. It's just very exhausting. And then this happened, that happened, this happened, that happened, this happened. You understand? But even more than that, much like, even reading biblical narratives, we would be able to, it was like a soap opera. To tell the truth, King David's behavior, his life, his decisions would have been like a soap opera. You know what I mean? Like, what did David do now? He did what? If you really think about it in the context, and I've said this before, when I went over David, did Saul hit David? That was a whole series. If you missed it, check it out. I broke down that whole series. But if you look at David's life, David was a musician. Therefore, David would have been in this particular space. Not only was he a musician, he was a warrior, which would have been translated as a quote gangster today. He yielded his sword, he went into battle, and on his off time, he sung songs. You understand? So David would have been a real life musician / warrior # gangster. I mean, a lot of people don't look at it that way because we're talking about David. When David came back, Saul was giving David the sneaky eye. Why? Because David had a whole entourage when he came back from war. And they even made up a song on the spot. And it's that song that Saul killed thousands and David killed 10,000. That's what pissed Saul off because Saul was the OG. And how did David get more props from the people than him? So when you really look at it through the lens of what we're seeing today, the drama, the relationships, the back and forth, all of that is still in the text. David getting with what people will say today, the op's daughter. So that not even, he didn't want to do it, but at that time Saul wasn't an op, but he later on becomes his opposition. And David is the one who's like trying to prove himself. He's the upstart, he's the intern, and he's going to be the intern who ultimately takes over the whole label. I mean, it's similar is what I'm saying. If you look at it through that lens, it's very similar. Like, Saul is the OG. He's the first of his kind. He's the first king of Israel. He's the first to ever do it. Okay. And everybody knows his name, and his family is Israelite royalty. Much like in this space, you have people who are, quote, hip hop royalty, who were there from the beginning. Are you following along? Right? So then he did in the same way we have people. The difference is one is supposed to be doing it for the creator, although the creator did not want you to have a king. So it was really man's will to shape destiny in this way, because the destiny of the nation was not to have a king. So there was a level of destiny exchange even at that point. I'll go into it more if you're not familiar with the story, but there was destiny exchange at that point, so much so that the prophet Samuel was upset, like, bro, what are y'all doing? It's much like how hip hop started out to, be something that was empowering, a voice of the people. But then somewhere along the line, it shifted and it became something else. It became compromised. That wasn't the intention of those who started off with hip hop. My thing fell off, but that's where it ended up. So much is like the story of Israel, where they weren't supposed to have a king. That was not the trajectory. That was not what was left on record for the people to have, but that's what the people willed. So some of this thought of people saying that, they destiny exchanged, or that fate is the individual's will to do X, Y, and Z and become X, Y, and Z. That's not necessarily what the creator had for them. That's what they wanted for themselves. And sometimes when you follow that course, instead of saying, creator, what do you have for me? When you follow the selfish will, it leads to certain places that you weren't supposed to be in the first place. Right? Yeah, so that's my thoughts on David. David wrote how many songs? Hashtag Psalms, right? He was the harpist. His first job in the palace was to play the harp. He was a musician. King David correlation. King David, if we want to, and the link is in the box. It's a new thing, but let me know if you can. King David had an entourage. King David was a warrior. Hashtag gangster. King David took down the ops. King David had women after him. You know what I'm saying? King David went on the run. You understand what I'm saying? And he wrote songs about people. He wrote diss tracks. I mean, it's not that far fetched. It is not that far fetched. But in this particular story, they're not putting really the creator into their narrative. This is man's will of what they want to accomplish and where they're trying to go and what they're trying to do. Let me see here if anybody would like to share. Hold on. Again, this is a little different. Let me make sure I didn't. This is a little bit different. I think it announces people when they come in. This one does. Yeah. So yeah, so it's it's a soap opera to many. Again, this ongoing saga of what happens at the end of the day, understanding how Saul, and I'm going to talk about Saul, basically choices that caused his destiny to change, right? In the same way, Esau, a lot of people blame Jacob. Jacob took an opportunity, and we're going to go over that as well. But that changed his destiny, as well as his brother made a choice that changed his destiny, right? So sometimes people willingly exchange their destiny. Sometimes people are coerced into doing so. Sometimes people are straight up tricked into doing so. Sometimes they're robbed, like in the case of Joseph. He's not given a choice. Someone takes action into their own hands and takes from him his opportunity to make a choice. But ultimately, it worked out. Like in the case of Abraham, it worked out for the betterment of the Creator, for the glory of the Creator. So the Most High allowed it. He allowed it to go through. Let me know if you have any questions or comments at this time. If not, I'm gonna go ahead and wind down, and definitely look for more of those videos, because as I'm sharing and studying, I'm learning and revisiting as well. And then you begin to see it in all places. In this particular case, it at the point that it was left at, before it went all the way left, there were some choices that were made, whether or not by Aaliyah, by Dame Dash, by William Jay-Z, in this type of triangle that caused the bitterness and the indifference that spilled over into other places in their life, right? And sometimes, again, we make those choices and then the consequences come. So with that said, look, guys, I have some little, let's go ahead and clap it up. Let's go ahead and clap it up. I got subscribe, and that's a long clap. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. I don't see anybody coming up. I'm going to go ahead and wind down now, and we will talk again later. All right. Now, how do we end this?